Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Barber, and today we're talking with Josh Whitmore, founder of the MTB Skills Factory in Brevard, North Carolina. Josh is a level 4 certified mountain bike coach, and he spent more than 25 years helping riders from total beginners to professional racers improve their skills and confidence on the trail. But we're not just going to talk about certifications and clinics today. We're going to dig into what really makes riders better, how to train your instincts, how to practice effectively, and what separates skills from fitness on the trail. Josh, thanks for joining me.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for having me on and the opportunity to be here.
So you've worked with riders of all levels. So I'm curious, when you think about the best mountain bikers that you've coached or ridden with, what makes them so great? Is it line choice, body position, mental focus? What is it that makes these riders different from the rest of us?
Yeah, and so let me clarify, I guess, when you're thinking about like the best riders, like are you talking racers or World Cup downhill?
Racers, but also a lot of us, I think, we ride with, say we're out in a group and we've always got that one person in the group that everybody's like in awe of their skill and is just like, oh, that's a great rider. So what makes people great riders kind of in your experience?
Yeah, I generally consider 6 different categories of things that make good riders. Okay. And certainly, our technical skills are a piece of that. So, we're talking about like, riding skills and then biomechanic kind of body movement stuff. Mm-hmm. But, we all can recognize that, perhaps there are other things at play too that may also influence our ability to perform, and great riders, will master more of these. So some of those, I guess, those other ones are, can be just physical fitness. Mm-hmm. Our ability to, there's a certain level of fitness that we need to have and strength to be able to perform specific, strength-based kind of maneuvers. Mm-hmm. So, that's pretty easy to identify. Another one that's pretty easy to identify is psychological factors. So you can think about mindset, resilience, like level of confidence, like, those kinds of things. And you probably recognize that, sometimes like your mental state, can affect your performance ability, right? But some other things that, I think come to mind too are really just stuff like environmental factors. So thinking about the rider's ability to handle different types of terrain or different conditions, being really have a lot of like black loam dirt here in North Carolina. And, mm-hmm. So when I go to like moon dust world and other parts of the country, it's like suddenly I'm not as good of a rider, right?
Right. Yeah.
It just takes me a little bit of time to, adjust to those conditions. So those kinds of things. And, another one could be equipment and the knowledge and ability for setup and, fit and operation of, just the equipment. And that really, I guess, leaves one more, which is a tactical approach. So the best riders are able to have really good strategy with their riding. So, and that could be a skill, kind of blends into skill too. But I think of like tactical strategy as like line choices, braking zones, stuff like that, which could also not necessarily like how to brake, but tactically kind of where to brake, or line choice could be but also like just in general prep for events or for their approach towards riding and how they approach getting better or the process of improvement. So I guess those 6 things are common ones that I would think about that all raise to the surface at some point or another to affect people's ability.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a whole package that makes somebody a great rider, but it also sounds like you're saying that maybe we should cut ourselves some slack when we're comparing ourselves to other riders, right? Because, we may be having a bad day on the bike because of stuff that happened before the ride, or it could be conditions. I find myself doing that a lot when I'm riding with someone and I'm like, man, they're so good. And then I start thinking, well, this is their local trail. They know where they're going. This is my first time riding it. So, is that important to kind of cut yourself some slack as well to say like, we are good riders. We just have things that we can work on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, cut yourself some slack, like having some grace with yourself, being humble and curious is a good approach to all of that. And yeah, certainly just kind of paying attention to the things, those different things that, I guess, limit your performance at different times, and trying to understand, what's boiling to the surface right now that is preventing that performance at the moment. But you can imagine, when you're riding really well and really excited about it, and that, all of those things are, kind of in tune and are taken care of at the moment.
Yeah. Well, how do you separate that? Like, as a rider, separate the difference between maybe a technical limitation where like you just don't have that skill or that fitness versus what is mental or temporary in a situation?
Yeah, I think really like self-awareness is a big part of that. I believe a good coach can also sense those things, through working with thousands of people. I feel like I'm pretty intuitive and empathetic about understanding being able to identify what people are feeling and what and how they're performing, and then understanding, if it's more of a mental approach of what, that's like the, I guess, boiling to the surface more at the moment, and then can customize the lesson towards working with those factors more than maybe X, Y, and Z steps of how to do something. But I think for discovering that yourself, it's really just paying attention to how you're feeling and what's going on in your head, what voices are talking to you at the moment. That's a big one. If the voices in your head are saying like, hey, this is fun and I'm awesome and this is a great day, and or versus like I'm scared, or I don't want to be here, or why are all these other people faster than me, or why can't I do this, or like paying attention to those voices tell you a lot about what's going on. Or maybe the voice is saying like, I just can't figure this out. Maybe you don't feel afraid or anxious or anything like that, but you're just like confused, or you feel stuck. And then those kinds of feelings might be more lend towards like, oh, well, maybe I need to figure out more of the kind of the technical skill aspect of this than to like change my mindset.
Interesting. Well, you've talked about this idea of failing forward. So I'm curious, what does that mean when it comes to learning new skills on a mountain bike?
Yeah, I just learned that concept there's a book, author John Maxwell, that wrote a book called Failing Forward, Turning Mistakes into Stepping Stones for Success. And basically the idea of that, in any good long process of improvement, you're not going to have all successes. There will be times when it's not that, or it's not going to go well, or you might make a mistake, or you can't just do it automatically. And so, there's a huge process of, I guess, looking at that as an opportunity for improvement rather than letting that defeat you to stop. So, it's like, okay, I want to do whatever maneuver there is, if I just can't do it, or even if I'm dedicated to a process of improving and stepwise, changing, like if I'm finding difficulties or having small little failures, that's not grounds to just quit. It's sort of like, oh, here's an opportunity here to treat that as like, fail forward. Okay, well, great. What did I learn from not being able to do it or failing at this? And how can that inform me the next time that I do it or down the road? So that's kind of the concept of failing forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you gotten to a point where you're like, not just comfortable with failing, but like, do you embrace it in terms of like, wow, awesome, like I failed, so I get to learn something from it? Or is that like a work in progress for you personally?
Personally, we need a mix of both. We need positive reinforcement of things that are going well, and we need to celebrate our small successes. and be really pumped about that when it happens, and being able to identify those things and not just be focusing on negative. The power of reinforcing what you're doing that's going well leads to. I mean, in the science world, it's exercise, kind of science world. The positive reinforcement is important in our skill development as a rider, and not just focusing on negatives. And so I'd say there's a mix of both, really, with that. But I guess it's kind of come back like treating the failures as potential opportunities for improvement and thinking of those as positive things that are like, if you're curious about them and can think about how to, what can you learn from them?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine for most of us, we recognize that and understand it. And though it may not be immediate, like you crash and you're like, yes, I crashed, I learned something, but it comes later, right? Like maybe the next day you're like, okay, I guess that was good that, I had that opportunity to learn something, and it's not going to happen again. So that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So a lot of us, when it comes to mountain bike skills, we know what to do. We've heard things from instructors, coaches like yourself, or, seen videos on YouTube with tips about, looking ahead, staying low, weighting the pedals. But that doesn't mean that we don't struggle to put it all together on the trail, even though we know what we're supposed to do. So I'm curious, what's the biggest mistake you see riders make when they're trying to practice these skills?
I'd say maybe one of the biggest ones is really just trying to do the complicated thing that they want to do, and just so. And I think that a lot of video how-to content is guilty of this. That that there's a lot of like video content of how to do like these advanced things. That really do a good job actually of like breaking it down into steps. Okay. Here are all the components of like this complicated thing. So then I think what, people try to do then is like, okay, well, I'm going to go try to do this complicated thing. And if I'm going to start into doing it. And if it doesn't work, then I'm just going to start again and try again. As opposed to, how can I develop, if I can't just do those things, how can I develop the skills or the foundation or the more of the elemental pieces of it before I actually put them together into doing this hard, complicated thing?
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe the answer is not just keep trying to do it over and over again. Maybe the answer is I need to go do something else that teaches me the elemental pieces of this in a different way that is maybe more simple, so that when I come back to try to apply it for this hard, complicated thing, I've already developed some of the fundamental or elemental pieces of it.
So an example maybe, so what if, one thing that people are trying to learn all the time, it seems, is how to wheelie. And so there's probably, 3 or 4 things, maybe more, that you need to do to like get up into a proper wheelie and to hold it. And so are you saying like, instead of just trying to, do 1, 2, 3, 4 at once, you need to do 1 by itself and 2 by itself, and then eventually you're able to put it all together? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, I like that. That analogy is a good one. We think about like, what are the fundamental or elemental pieces of doing a wheelie, and then how can I break some of those apart into different pieces, and then pull that piece out and work on just that piece, and then get better at that one piece. And when I break it into these smaller things, then I can, it's easier to achieve improvement, and I'm able to focus on kind of one thing. You think about like maybe another example could be cornering in general, that there's a lot that goes into cornering, right? And so if you're trying to concentrate on the 10 different aspects of cornering, then, your ability to focus on any one of those things is kind of goes out the door, right? And so, okay, well, but if I just take one piece of it, let's focus on our lean angle versus I don't know, the how supportive the berm is or something.
Right.
Or rotation or whatever it is, then we can kind of pull that out, work on it. And then when we plug it back into the puzzle, everything works better. I guess an analogy I can have of that is like, if you want to upgrade your bike, you can change the tires. Mm-hmm. And all you've done is improve the tires for the conditions you're going to ride in. Mm-hmm. But it makes the whole bike ride better when you do it.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing when we break apart some of those more complicated things into individual elements, that we can improve those individual elements and put them together. And a lot of times, like they're built on top of each other too, like building blocks. Mm-hmm. You think about like a pyramid built of blocks. We have to have a strong foundation and base, and then build that stepwise. So I can't put the top piece on the pyramid until I have something to put it on.
Right. Right.
There's a couple of the ways I think about that.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. So based on this and like with this in mind, do you think should riders be doing these structured drills or practicing skills in a parking lot or a field, or is it better to practice on the trail? I think for most of us, we want you to say that we can just go to the trail and practice this stuff, but what's like the real answer?
Yeah, well, I think both of those can work fine. The concept we're working with here in coaching, or you're asking about, is relationship between challenge of terrain and then my ability to execute a skill. So in order to maximize my ability to experiment with new things, I need to turn down the challenge of the terrain to a point where I've got some margin of error, that I've got some ability to try new things. So that might mean that I need to turn the challenge of the terrain all the way down to a flat parking lot or a grass field. Low consequence, like I've removed, a lot of that challenge. And then at that point, I can really concentrate on the movement patterns or acquiring these new things that I'm working on, because I'm not distracted so much on the trail. But, that could also mean, riding a blue trail instead of a black trail, like we're going to do this thing on this blue flow trail instead of that, like black trail.
I like that.
So it's kind of relative to the skill and what, how much, challenge is coming from the terrain, but in general, we've got to reduce the challenge of the terrain enough to be able to be adjustable to learn new things.
Yeah. And it reminds me too of like testing, or, kind of like this scientific process of removing a lot of the variables and really like narrowing down on the thing you're trying to do. And sounds like in some cases that means doing it in a parking lot or a field or somewhere. But in other cases, you can do it, but dialing the challenge down to, for me, a green trail, like dialing down to a green and practicing there. I think that makes a lot of sense and sounds more fun too than doing it in a parking lot, which I think a lot of people dread.
Yeah, I agree, right? That should be one of the primary, goals of riding, right? Is more fun. We want to have fun when we're riding, right? So we also have the other aspect of it of, the terrain challenge, and it's sort of the level of arousal in the rider of there's a sweet spot of, if it's boring, so if you spend too much time in a grass field or a parking lot, then like the rider can get bored with doing that.
Right.
Okay. And then their level of being able to learn new things or being invested in their trying to learn new things starts to decrease.
Right.
On the other end of the spectrum, right, is like, if we ride stuff that's too hard for us, then our level of arousal is too high. We're in kind of survival mode and we're panicking, like a lot of times we're not able to like, we're just survival mode. So that's too high. So there's a sweet spot in there where we need to be able to have the right level of arousal to be also learn how to do stuff. Now I'd say like, a good coach can be adaptable to understanding, what that level of challenge is for the rider, what's going to be able to read that in the rider and then understand what kind of terrain is going to match that level of arousal, and then they're dial it down enough for them to be able to like try new things, and be able to sometimes teach in the grass classroom, as we say, but maybe just spend the minimum amount of time we need there before we take it on to trail. There's certainly coaches that will and programs out there that spend maybe the majority of their time in big open areas and grass fields with kind of mobile props and stuff like that. And that's, I would say, is like, there's pros and cons to that in the way that, and it's very repeatable. So you could take that same setup to a city park in the middle of a big city, or you could go from one location to another if you're kind of in a traveling outfit, and then kind of have a repeatable product. But I'd see over and over again that riders will come to us after doing one of those kind of like grass field oriented skills clinics, and then basically that they've been introduced to a lot of things in this grass field, and then they come to us and complain that they have trouble putting it together on the trail now, and that they need help with, okay, I sort of understand, these body movements or whatever the skills were that we were introduced to, and with some props and that sort of thing, but like how do I do it on the trail? When do I do it? How much do I do it on real trail features? Is kind of a next step that I see a lot of those riders taking.
Yeah, interesting. Well, after someone does, a class or a clinic with you or your instructors, how much practice is involved? I imagine, there's homework and there's things you're going to be doing kind of on your own afterwards. So are we talking like an hour a week? Or I imagine too, it depends on how quickly you're trying to progress and what your goals are. But what's your kind of general advice for people in terms of how much time they need to put into skills work?
Yeah, I think how much time is really dependent on what their goals are, and then how much time they have. And then,
but nobody has time to practice skills, right? If I have time, I want to go ride trails and just have fun. So yeah. What's a number? What's like the minimum?
You want a number?
Yeah. What's the minimum I have to do?
Goodness. That's tough to know. I'd say like weekly in some form or fashion is fun. And, even on that trail ride, if you have if you could dedicate a portion of your just fun trail ride, if you're riding on your own, or like a piece of a downhill, even if you're that kind of thing, is like, think a little bit about having some purpose for using the terrain that you are riding. So like maybe you can zone out and have your fun ride, but then maybe pick a specific downhill or something or a section of trail that or a technical climb or something that you can like. Okay, I'm going to focus now on this specific thing. Okay. And yeah, you're right. We do give homework quite a lot. So. Specifically from private lessons, we do mostly private lessons, and then we have we do a fair amount of group clinics too, but small group, sort of max of 6 with one coach, and mostly trail oriented kind of group clinics. But from those private lessons, we're able to kind of prescribe the homework, and then also, so hey, when here are the things you need to work on your own next. Or keep, the thing that we did, during our lesson, here's a video of it, like do this thing on your own. And when you feel like you have reached a plateau with it or are bored with it, then come back for new assignments.
Okay.
Or send us a video of you doing it, and we'll let you know if we've seen improvement.
Let you know if you can move on. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know if there's a set number. I know you want a number, but
yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, right. Obviously, it's going to depend on who you are and where your skills are and what your goals are, for sure. But it's more than 0, right? I mean, it's not like you can just go out and like, okay, I've got the knowledge. I went to this clinic or this private lesson, and now I know everything. It's not that. There is time involved that you need to dedicate to that.
Yeah, or at least that we see in every clinic and every private lesson, we see an immediate step up in ability. And sometimes depending on the rider, that if they're a real advanced rider, like some of the pro racers that I work with, we're looking for like really tiny little things that they're improving, and that's kind of stressful as a coach because oftentimes it feels more awkward for them to do something different than it.
So you don't want to mess them up. You're like, you're very good already, and you don't want to. Yeah.
Versus like, let's say more beginner riders, they're just like this dry sponge that needs everything. And then, in the course of a 2 or 3 hour thing, like they can they can make a huge improvement in their ability. And it's just that they're capable people or capable athletes, but they just don't know what to do, or they just haven't, it's like you can tell them what to do and then they just do it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, wow, this feels better than me trying to figure it out on my own, like right away. Right. Yeah. So I guess, it just kind of depends on the level of rider too, and then how invested you are in it. Like if you want to ride your bike and don't want to work on skills, like go ride your bike and don't work on skills. Like if that's fun and you right. are happy with what you're doing. And like, I think that's what's amazing about the bike in general is that we can enjoy it on any level we want. Like it doesn't make me a better rider than you or anyone else, or, compared to anyone else, if I enjoy it a different way than you enjoy it. And I have some people that like love being intentional with their skill acquisition or their fitness acquisition or whatever it is, and get really detail oriented with it. And other people are just like, man, this is like my release. I don't need all that. I just want to go ride my bike. And yeah, it's fine to experience the bike however you like to experience it, as long, as long as it's a positive thing for you. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's super helpful, I think, for a lot of people to know that there are those options and we all have different approaches to it. So, you mentioned working with more advanced riders. I'm curious, what are some subtle habits or characteristics that separate someone who's like a pretty good rider from someone who's really, truly dialed?
I think we've talked a little bit about some of these already. I think that, if I had to, kind of like correlate the traits that I see, really good riders have, is that, I think that they, in general, with their mindset, they're pretty resilient, and adaptable and humble. So, they do things like celebrate small wins and improvements, generally kind of a positive mindset. They look for opportunities to improve. They're humble in their ability and are always curious about how they're doing stuff or how they can get better. They are hungry for improvement, and they're hungry for the process of being dedicated to a process like that they are trying to I guess like dedicated to that process is a good way to think about it.
And being intentional, so, like you said. Yeah. That makes sense, that there are people that are very good riders, and that may be just because they ride a lot and they've kind of picked things up over time, versus maybe if you're more intentional about it, you're going to end up over time, maybe at a different level with that, which is interesting.
Yeah, and that really comes back to the why. Like one of the things I like to connect with people with a little bit when I'm working with them is sort of like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you riding a bike? Like, what is your interest in this? And it's, and that can inform, what our goals are and our outcomes and what our process is, right? Is like, yeah, that's just kind of coming back to the why, that can help us to understand, okay, well, what kind of a process do we want to be dedicated to, or not?
The folks that you work with, is there kind of a wide range of the answer to that question of the why? I mean, are a lot of people there because they want to race and they just want to get faster and get better, or there are also people, I imagine there are also people that just want to get better so they can enjoy biking more. So yeah, what do you see in terms of people's whys?
Yeah, we have I would say a wide range of those whys, like from, hey, I'm just getting started for my first mountain bike rides and I want to take a lesson to learn it right. You think about learning skiing or snowboarding or something, like it's pretty universally recognized. You start with the lesson, right? It's like, so they're like, okay, I want to start with the lesson, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I've got pro racers who are, are like, hey man, whatever you got, like I'm trying to get faster. Like, I need
1 second.
like, or milliseconds, right? Anything like, what do you got, but I'd say that that's kind of a bell curve, on either end of the spectrum. And then, in the middle of that bell curve where we see most of our whys tend to be folks that are, they just feel stuck. So think about, that sort of rider that's been riding for a little while, or maybe even for several years. And they're mostly like all of us did. We learned how to ride bikes you got on a bike and you started riding it, and you just sort of intuitively figured out a lot of stuff. Maybe you got some tips from friends, that kind of thing. But then, they've gotten to a point where they, at the beginning, they probably saw like an improvement curve in their ability, and they were psyched about that. And they were like, man, I'm getting better. This is awesome. And then their ability level kind of plateaus out. Like they feel kind of stuck in their ability. And I think as humans in general, like innately, we enjoy learning and getting better at things. I think that's a common human trait for most people, I think. And so then, if they're starting to get a little bored with their riding, or they are curious about opening up new terrain to them. So, a big one around here in Brevard, right, is like, we had since I started riding in the late 80s, we had Pisgah, right? And Pisgah's old gnarly hiking trails. And then it was in the last, 8 or 9 years or something, there started to be places that had good jumps. And so, all the old Pisgah riders around here were like, oh, how do you ride a jump? It's like they didn't come from BMX or anything like that. And so then, I've had that's a common thing around here is like, riders that have maybe even been riding for 20, 30 years, but are now like, I want to go to the bike park and ride these like bike park specific things. And there's jumps and berms and I just don't know how to do that. So maybe they just want to open up new terrain. So those are some of the whys. And then I also have like riders that just want to keep doing it for health and fitness and enjoyment. Like I have one regular client that's in his late 80s that is just like, he's still learning, and how to be a better mountain biker. And he wants to, be able to be more and enjoy it more and keep doing it. And so, the strategy with him is a lot of like, how can he be efficient with his strength ability and, that he has, and his mobility that he has, and be safe. I don't want him to like crash and hurt himself and end his biking career. Right. So, so wide range, but
it's a huge variety for sure. And a lot, some that I hadn't even thought of, but maybe kind of in the back of my mind, the jumps thing certainly resonates with me, right? Like been riding a long time, and technical trails don't scare me at all. But jumps do, because I just don't have a lot of that near me, but it is fun to be able to do that stuff when you travel. So yeah, great example.
Or, we'll see the opposite of that too with some of the racer kids. And so I feel like, I've got youth riders that I work with that are maybe they came from doing more like jumping world, like dirt jumping stuff, or that was just what they got good at first. That was their hook into the sport, BMX, or maybe just mountain bike jumping or whatever at the bike park. And then now they're getting more into like, let's say enduro racing or downhill racing in general. And then they're coming to us to be like, hey, I haven't spent as much time on the tech stuff, so I need to figure out to be a better rounded racer rather than just being able to throw sick tricks on the jumps. It's like, I need to figure out how to ride this tech stuff. So what do you got?
Yeah.
So that's another, I see that coming the other direction as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so a lot of mountain bikers, myself included, tend to think, and we rely a little bit on just pedaling our way out of sketchy situations, or, compensating for a lack of skills through fitness. So I'm curious, how do you balance that fitness and skill in your own training, and how should riders prioritize that, or recognize maybe when there's sort of an imbalance between the two?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, you can overcome some skill efficiency with strength and fitness. So you can so that is true. We see riders that you kind of like the classic example of like kind of just like muscle through things rather than finesse their way through it.
Yeah, like a technical climb. Like if I've got the power, I can just get over a lot of stuff, but maybe there's a better way to do it.
Yeah. And we think about, for that example, like technical climbing, that, that rider that's putting a lot of their kind of muscle into it, you would say like, it's like, maybe they're able to do that feature, but are they able to do the whole trail efficiently? Are they going to like run out of energy?
Yeah. Then you got nothing for the descent. I've been guilty of that for sure.
Right. Or it's so much of, kind of like we think about in the strength training world, you think about percentage of 1 rep max. You do a lot of, prescribing strength training, what weights, as percentage of 1 rep max or percentage of 5 rep max, something. But okay, let's say that like on the trail, like to do that tech climbing feature, it's a max effort for you. Like it's a very high percentage of your 1 rep max. And then, are you going to be able to do 10 of those right in a row? Or are you going to have to stop and rest in between each one?
Right.
And, maybe if you're more efficient with your skill application, then you could use less energy and you could do more of them, or go faster, or make it look more elegant. Depends on what your goal outcome is.
Right.
But I think like prescribing workouts or prescribing skills training to athletes or to people in general, riders in general, it's it comes back again to like what their goals are, and then are they trying to go uphill, like the whole uphill, quickly? Like, are they, like a cross country racer, or they're going for that KOM climb or whatever it is? Are they trying to, I don't know, look more steezy for their
yes
video? I don't know, whatever it is. Or just be able to handle more terrain. Like I don't want to. So I think it comes back to goals again.
Yeah.
Custom for each person. So
right. Yeah, and so I guess recognizing that too, as a coach, as an instructor, you're able to kind of tailor what you're doing and recognize kind of where people's limitation is, whether it's on the skill side or the fitness side. I mean, to me, they're so related. Like when I'm tired, my skills are suffering, and that's when I start to make mistakes. And so for me, I guess maybe a lot of times I try to compensate for that. I'm like, well, I just need to be more fit, and then, I'm going to ride better. But I think it seems like also what I hear from folks is that by having those skills, you are more efficient when you're riding, and you're able to eke out more gains even with your current fitness. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. The analogy I like to use is that it's kind of like thinking about your body like a hybrid car. Okay. So there are times when you're using a lot of battery juice, and then there are times when you're regenerating the battery. And so if you can improve your efficiency through skill, then so that you're not using as much battery drain, for any given feature,
right?
Then your overall battery level is going to be higher. And then more importantly, can you improve your skill ability to the point where you can like kind of regenerate that battery and add to it, so that what ends up happening is that if you can do that, then the places that you need it the most, you have more ability for.
Right.
So the places that are the most challenging physically and skill wise for you, you've just got a better battery for it. So you think about like an example of that could be, I was working with this, myself, even just on a downhill race that was like, there's like, the old man category on the pro course is a good category to race in, because we try and take care of each other, but we got to ride the pro course, right? It's
right.
it's hard. So that this one feature that I was working on it's like I could ride it by itself, but I was not sure. So by itself, if I was like rested and started above it, session it, I feel like I could do it kind of like 10 out of 10 times like that.
Yeah.
But put it in the middle of a race run, most of the way down the track, I'm going to get there tired.
Right.
And I did not feel like I was able to do that 10 out of 10 times. And the consequences of screwing it up were like bad. Big road gap. Okay. Yeah. So I made the decision, and even though I could ride it by itself, like during the race run, it did not make sense for me to do. So I rode around it. And so then, all kinds of things come into play with that, ego and whatever. But that's an example of, if I was able to, be more efficient or have better skills to be more efficient or save more battery on the way down, then when I got to that feature, maybe I would have the battery quote to be able to do that thing.
Right.
So that's an example of that.
Yeah, that's a great example. So let's talk about flow. And hopefully everybody listening here is a mountain biker and they know what we're talking about when we're talking about flow. But it's that magical feeling when everything just clicks on a ride. And that's the thing we're always looking for. And, we're chasing that. Like I know for me, every single ride, that's why I'm there, is to get to that. So I'm curious, from a coach's perspective, what's actually happening when a rider hits that flow state?
Yeah, this is fascinating. So my master's degree in outdoor education and sort of psychology of recreation. Most of my focus for my own research and stuff was about flow state.
Oh, cool.
And so I was pretty fascinated with it. One of the things I found is that the thing that I did as a graduate student research project was that I was kind of measuring it. So different people will experience flow state more readily than other people. Some people experience it more often or are more motivated by flow state. Other people less so. Okay. And then I basically correlated that with activities that are commonly induce flow state. So things, like mountain biking or, those kinds of things where people experience flow state. Could be playing music or whatever it is. And so then I correlated, okay, well, if you're a person that is more motivated or able to achieve flow state more often, are you more likely to participate in that flow inducing activity more often? And the answer was yes. Okay. So, but let's think a little bit about flow state. And the definition of flow state is really like that you have a matching of your skill ability and then the challenge level. Okay. So you think about this exact confluence of that you're challenged in a meaningful way, and that the skill that you have meets that challenge just.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's like perfect flow state. Okay.
Yeah. It's not too challenging and it's not too easy. It's
exactly.
Okay.
And the skill ability that you have to add to it is it matches that.
Right.
So as a coach, the way we work with that is thinking about how people learn in general. And there's this teaching model that's basically starts out with that you're unconsciously incompetent. It's like you're incompetent at what you're trying to do, and you don't even know what you're doing wrong.
Okay.
Right. So as a coach, we move people from that unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. All right. Hey, here's how this thing works, and here's how to do it. But you still can't do it. But now you at least understand the steps. Yeah. Yeah. You're of a conscious incompetence.
Okay.
And then through a lot of practice and, stepwise stuff and all the coach, magic that we put into things, then we lead to a conscious competence, where it's like you can do it, but it is still a very conscious process. You're not necessarily in that flow state yet, where time disappears and you just do the thing without thinking about it in that flow state. Yeah. So that conscious competence might be that you have to consciously think, when I see A, B, and C, I got to do X, Y, and Z. But it's still kind of a clunky conscious process. And then through doing that over and over again, it eventually leads to what we call unconscious competence. So a lot of rhyming here, which is basically that means that you're doing it well and you don't have to consciously think about what you're doing. So that's kind of where flow lives, in that it's just happening you're able to cruise off that jump, or a series of jumps down a trail, and you're not, the computer in your brain isn't looking at each ramp and thinking about the size and the shape and the speed and like tabulating this like spreadsheet of outcomes, and press here, do that, whatever. Yeah. And it just happens. And that's, it's sort of a joyous flow experience.
Yeah. Well, this is fascinating. And I like how you make it. I mean, that's a very simple definition of where your skill meets the challenge exactly. And so now I'm wondering about, and you also mentioned that people, for some people, like getting to that flow state is more, they really want to do it. Like it makes them happier, or whatever metric we can put on it. And so I'm curious. So let's say there is a trail or a section of trail that is, the perfect match for my skill. It's the perfect amount of challenge. And so potentially it sounds like I'm going to hit that flow state. But now I'm curious, can I hit it again, like multiple times? Or once I meet that challenge, it's done and I need like a more challenging thing? Like, how do I keep accessing that flow state if it is that balance between challenge and skill?
Yeah, you can absolutely hit it again in that same thing. And I go back to those in the very beginning of our conversation, those kind of like 6 performance affecting factors that, maybe something changes and it pulls you out of flow state, that your psychological mindset or whatever, it changes, and that prevents you from being in flow state on that same section of trail. Maybe the environmental conditions change. It like, it rained overnight or something.
Oh, right.
The routes are all
trails
slippery,
change a lot. Yep.
Maybe you're riding a different bike, or like whatever it is, maybe you're tired physically from you did your, we're at the gym in the morning, or you've been riding a bunch the past few days, or, it's at the end of the day at the bike park and you're just smoked, or at the end of a long ride. But, so I would say that it takes a while for because when we think about flow as that meeting of challenge and skill, if your skill ability is increasing over long-term time, then the challenge level of that same section of trail may also just become boring to you at some point.
Right. I see.
Or less, your level of arousal will be less. So, so I notice that all the time. Is like I travel quite a bit to train other coaches how to be coaches, and I'll be, maybe once a year I'll be at a location like some bike park around the country. And so then, even in my own skill development, I'll like, let's take Whistler for example. It's like each time I come back to Whistler once a year to teach there, then I end up, it's like, oh, I've improved. Like the trails that I used to find flow state in, like I'm like, are now like feel a little boring. Like I kind of need something else. So then it's kind of fun to take a step away from that section of trail you're talking about, and then come back to it, a year later or whatever. And, and you'd be like, oh, my skill level improved enough that this trail is no longer like inducing that same match of skill and challenge. So.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it kind of answers my next question, which is, how do you measure progress in skills versus, fitness is pretty easy, right? I mean, you could go out and you could run a mile, and the next day see if you're faster. But with skills, how do you measure that you're actually improving and that your skills are better from one day to the next?
Yeah, well, at first it's really tough to measure one day to the next, right? It's like, it's kind of a long-term improvement curve. And it's not linear either. There'll be times when you may be worse or feel worse. And specifically too, a lot of times when we're learning new things, especially for better riders, like it feels more awkward and weird or slow to do things differently. You're mapping new movement patterns. And so then it may actually feel worse for a while until it like incorporates. So I run into that quite a lot with like the real high level riders that, have to like promise them that like
that they're like, freaking out. They're like, what? You messed me up. They're like, just wait, it's like, stay with it.
It's like, this feels worse. It's like, well, you're like good right now in spite of yourself. So, but I think, I mean, one way to measure that long term is like, it's really like your fun meter, you know, like, are you having more fun on the same terrain, or are you
I like that.
achieving flow state more often or whatever? You know, or confidence in terrain, you know, so, you know, you like, let's say, you know, think about like drops as a classic one of this, that, you know, you rock up to this big drop and you're like, you know, your brain is like scared, like, no, I don't want to do that. That's too much.
Yeah.
You know, you go away, you do homework, you ride other smaller drops, you like work on your skills or whatever. And, you know, you come back to that same big drop and you'd be like, how do I feel about it? And it's like, no, I don't want to do it. Like, too hard. Go away. You know, like, do more work, whatever. And you come back, and eventually you come back and you'd be like, oh, I see that. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then it's time to execute. You know, I like it when you rock up to old features that used to scare you and be like, oh, now I see it. Like, I see another rider do it, and you'd be like, oh, I totally get, I can do that.
Yeah.
Those are good. Great. Those are good sensations to tell you're in. Also, I guess video analysis is another way. So we use this app called Sport Sense quite a lot, which is a video analysis tool for sport stuff. And so we, through that, like, I encouraged our clients to send us videos of them doing things, you know, down the road, and you know, we give them like continual feedback on what they're doing. And but you even just like self video is good in the way that if you are looking for, you know, did I move more? Was my timing good?
And does that actually quantify it too for you? I mean, it sounds like it's more sophisticated than just like an iPhone video that you watch back. Does it kind of quantify like your form or how you're doing in your skills?
I don't know that. No, it doesn't really like quantify like, oh, I moved, you know.
Yeah, this angle is better before you were at 30 and now you're at 32, or no?
Yeah, it's definitely not that like level of detail, but you know, you could think about like your self-perception versus what you actually are doing, you know, is you know, and you see a video of yourself, you're like, oh, well, I wasn't low at all through that, or like, I thought I was getting my hips outside of the bike on that turn, but I really wasn't, or like, look how stiff, and you know, and so you know, just being able to see that yourself.
Like Reddit and different forums where people will post a video and be like, how's my form? And so, it sounds like that's a really helpful thing to do.
Yeah. If you're not, you know, or I guess if the more fitness metrics aren't, you know, like segment times or you know, power output or whatever it is, like if we're beyond that level of detail, then some of those other things can be more subjective.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I should highlight, you kind of gave us like you answered a bonus question there, which I didn't even ask, which is, you know, about, I think a lot of people struggle with fear and, you know, rolling up to a feature and being afraid and being like, well, how do I get over that fear? And I think you answered it without me asking the question, but to say that, I mean, you kind of know, like, you need those skills. And when you have those skills, you'll know that you're ready. You know, I think when we watch somebody like, say, a rampage athlete doing a thing, and we're just like, oh my gosh, they just must have no fear. That's not it. They have skills. That's the difference, right? So that's great.
Yeah. I'd say that I guess a key takeaway of that is that happens to all of us in some shape or fashion. That, you know, especially when we get into terrain that feels consequential to us. And, you know, let's think about, I mean, that real quick, like the rampage athlete, you know, on the kind of jumps that I like jumping and achieve flow state on jumping, like that would not feel consequential to them. Like that's very easy, you know?
Yeah.
But the kind of stuff that they're riding is like at the edge of their ability. And so they're going to feel fear. Yeah. Right. And I think the mindset thing, and I help riders do this all the time, is to understand that fear is not it's a good thing in the way that it's our brain telling us to be cautious. And fear can be thought about on a continuum of like slightly aroused and maybe a little anxious to all the way up to like debilitating,
right?
Like fight or flight, like, you know, like flight kind of thing, right? You know, so you have to kind of like understand where you are on that scale. It's okay to be nervous about stuff. Now, the opportunity for being somewhere in that scale where that's not debilitating, is that fear can heighten your ability to focus and to execute. So when I'm riding stuff that's like consequential and it's like getting towards the edge of near the edge of my ability, I'm going to be nervous.
Right.
But as long as I'm nervous to a level that is a performance enhancer in the way that it allows me to focus and execute and be excellent, then that's a good thing. Okay. If it tips over the balance into that it robs my performance, then that's when we need to like shift to do something else. Can we change that state of mind? Or do we need to say no for the day?
So recognizing that, I think that's probably always going to be a challenge for people, but it sounds like you can get better at it in terms of like recognizing where you are on that fear progression, just kind of with experience.
Yeah, and understanding like, if it's something that's changeable, okay, let's say that you are at a feature that you have the ability to do, you've done the homework, you've ridden things similar to that in the past, maybe you've ridden that thing before, but for whatever reason, like you're experiencing this kind of fear response at the moment, is that a can you change it? Can you put yourself in the right environment to change it? Surround yourself with the right people, get the right type of encouragement. Is it the conditions, whatever it is, like, can you talk yourself into it in a way that changes that mindset to I can do this and feel good about it rather than like being a performance robber. So yeah. So and then maybe that's the answer to that is like, okay, breaking it down into what are the execution pieces to this thing, and can I focus on just executing the sequence of events that need to happen to make this thing happen? And so then rather than like fear of an unknown outcome or an unknown thing, like I'm going to try it and see what happens. Like you identify what the process is. Okay, here are the steps that I need to do this feature. Can I do those things? All right, I'm going to execute those steps. Here I go. Focus.
Yeah.
So those are some tricks to work with that stuff that would help with athletes all the time. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Josh, you've been doing this for a long time. And so I'm curious, how has mountain bike coaching changed since you started?
Yeah. Well, I originally started, I guess it would have been in the late 90s. There's a lot of summer camps in this area in Western North Carolina. And so then a lot of those programs started getting mountain bikes in the 90s. And I was like, my undergrad degree was wilderness leadership and experiential education. And we were, so I was working a lot in those kind of like summer camp adventure programs and trying to figure out how to teach bikes to kids in summer camp. And there was nothing that really existed at that point. I actually wrote a curriculum guide for several summer camps of how to teach mountain biking to these kids. And
cool.
So we just didn't have the resources. Now going back and reading that now, it's hilarious. I was probably 19 years old and inventing this stuff on my own, and then since then, the mountain bike coaching industry in general is, and it's still an emerging industry, I would say, but certainly has become a profession that you can do. I teach full time year round. There's not a lot of us in the country that can say that they do that full time. Doing that, I guess, for about 10 years now. Full time, and that's but there's there is a body of knowledge and an industry standard and people that are doing it. So it's not as well developed, I guess, as like the ski sports industry or snow sports industry. You think about like ski instruction has been happening like at a professional level for 100 years or more.
Yeah. Wow.
Mountain biking instruction is not that to there. And so then therefore there's a wide variety of coachability and professionalism out there in the profession. So, certainly I take the mentality that I want to help contribute to the industry to raise, the classic example of raise the tide for everyone. Let's raise the standard of professionalism in the mountain bike coaching world so that we all benefit. The riders, the riding public, understands that it's something that can benefit them and that is worthwhile paying for. And that it's not like some kind of joke or or like, what do you even do?
Right.
You know?
Right. Like if your friend goes and gets coached by somebody who, maybe doesn't have a background, they're just a good rider, and they, try to help them. And then that friend comes back and is like, yeah, I don't think I really learned anything from that, or I don't know that I got better. Then yeah, that hurts the next guy. Cause then you're like, well, I'm not going to sign up for a skills class. Doesn't sound like that's helpful.
Yeah, and I don't want to discount the the hobby coach that's just trying to help and wants to do it out of passion.
Mm-hmm.
That those are very valuable in the industry as well. That that you can seek information if you're curious about getting better and want to seek information or help. It can happen in any way. It can happen from your well-meaning friends,
Mm-hmm.
who may or may not have any coaching training or ability or experience, but they might have good advice, right? And they're going to help you if they want to help, right? And then all the way up to like full-time professionals that dedicated their whole lives to to this type of work. Is going to be a different product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I'm honest with people. When people ask me, they say, "Oh, how do you do this?" Especially my son, he'll say, "Dad, how do I bunny hop?" And just like, I'm not the person to tell you. I mean, I can do it, but I don't know what I'm doing or why it works or any of that stuff. And so, yeah, I try to defer to that, but I'm sure you get all kinds of responses from folks.
Yeah. Well, and I think a good coach is humble enough to be able to articulate the types of things that they are comfortable in coaching and the types of things when that they are not. So you think like even like a professional coach that's newer in the industry, may feel more comfortable in their wheelhouse to be able to teach, more beginner to intermediate level riders, but don't feel comfortable in helping that advanced level rider, like get their whips farther out, what I'm saying? Like, but the role of that more beginner coach is like, we need those coaches. We need those, we need them to do a fantastic job of like bringing people into the sport, helping them progress. And those coaches may identify more with those beginner riders, and the process that they are in and learning right now. It's a classic thing that like professional racers that try to do some coaching, oftentimes just don't identify with the process that the beginner level rider is going through, because they'll be like, oh, just do this. And then they can't do that. And then they're stuck, It's like, okay, well, so anyway, there's just to say that there's a variety of, levels of experience, but I feel like, people can be professional in the industry or be professional with their actions with a variety of experience levels. It's all a matter of like, staying in your wheelhouse and, being, honest with what you can do. Yeah. As a coach.
Yeah, it seems like there's a huge need, especially at that beginner level, like you're talking about. And, I'm thinking specifically of like high school mountain biking. And I'm sure NICA and these leagues around the country have their own kind of like basic training for adult volunteers and people like that. But yeah, it seems like that's a huge need, is for these riders to be getting the best instruction that they can, and it's not kind of just ad hoc, and maybe you have a good person that can coach that's involved with your team, maybe you don't. So yeah, it seems like that's a real need.
Yeah, and I like that those, you think about like, NICA or those high school leagues in general, they do have an element of skills instruction. You have volunteer coaches that are, parents and things that are running those teams, and they're very well intentioned, and a lot of them are really good at what they do. But that's a fantastic like kind of starting point for those kids, right? Is that they're getting good structure. There's an organizational structure and curriculum that goes along with that, and so that like volunteer coach is able to learn how to implement a curriculum that is provided to them by, like a more well thought out, organization. So in that kind of realm, like that's that's being professional in even though, they're like volunteer coaches doing this out of the good of their heart, that they are able to offer a good, product for what their intention is for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would say that, the kind of the minimum sometimes for coaches is that, if you're going to pay someone to teach you something,
mm-hmm.
There's a few like just industry standard prerequisites that you need to ask about right away. And that's, things like, do they have a business entity? Do they have commercial liability insurance?
Okay. That's good.
Are they allowed, do they have some kind of like agreement, or sometimes permits are needed in order to teach on the land that are the trails that they are in? So for instance, here in like Pisgah National Forest is classic that we have a commercial user agreement with the federal government, U.S. Forest Service, in order to operate commercially in the national forest. And that means that I also have to pay per person, a fee to the to the federal government, and for that privilege of making money in the national forest. But that can look differently for different things, right? I also have to list the, U.S. Forest Service as additionally insured in my commercial insurance policy, which costs money.
Right.
Right. But then also, thinking about like, okay, well, what kind of first aid training do they have? It's definitely an industry standard to have some level of first aid training, depending on the terrain that you're working in. That could be different levels. So, if it's pretty front country, just like basic first aid and CPR, or whether you move up through wilderness first aid or to the more the gold standard, like wilderness first responder for like more remote operations. So it's stuff like that, that I'd just ask right away, encourage people to ask right away.
Yeah. And then there are levels of certification too for coaches. So can you talk a little bit about that? I know you're level 4 certified now. And so is that like, what are the different levels mean? Like, should people care about that? Like if I'm choosing a coach, what does that mean to me? And sort of how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to address that by saying that it is absolutely possible to be a great coach with no certifications.
Okay.
There are a lot of people out there who have a lot of experience, a lot of results with coaching, who have never taken a certification course. And that's great. They learned, the best ones of those have learned that through experience working with people in person, a lot of them, or they've been able to apprentice under programs that have offered them training and kind of mentorship. But the way that I view certification is it's like professional development. So in the United States, it's not required to be certified to teach anything. Well, skill stuff like mountain biking or
school,
rock
maybe.
climbing.
Hopefully school, there's some kind of...
Right.
Yeah, maybe not.
But it's a way, I would say, that certifications are a way to professional development for coaches. It's a way to gain more proficiency in your coaching ability and more quickly. So rather than kind of learning trial and error or like iterative process in your own, it's like, okay, well, let's lean on the industry as a whole, and the experience of the industry of whole, of like good practice and good methodology, and be able to sort of stand on the shoulders of that industry. So that's kind of the way I think about certification. Now, the level of certification mostly deals with the kind of scope of practice. So, level 1 certification in general is like working with beginner and intermediate level riders and kind of beginner, intermediate level terrain. There's certifications that deal with more air stuff like jumping and drops, kind of certifications for tech stuff. There's certification, the level 4 certification is the highest level. And that's kind of working with all level riders and all terrain. And also like more long-term development of riders. So, so it's like, if you have someone you work with monthly over the period of years, like how do you structure that into a longer term thing?
I see.
So I would say that, the thing that certification allows the consumer to do is to easily recognize that this person has passed the internationally recognized standard for the thing that they're certified to do. So it's like having a driver's license in the way that you're like minimally competent at the level of the certification to do the thing that you are certified to do. That doesn't make you a great coach. Certification doesn't make you a good coach. It's just professional development. So it's like there's a lot that goes into coaching. You can't expect to take a weekend level 1 certification course and suddenly be a great coach. Like there's a lot more that goes into it. The best coaches, even with certification, exist in an environment where there is apprenticeship and mentorship and peer learning, peer feedback, so that they can, learn in a myriad of ways. So,
that makes sense. I think, with a lot of things, experience tends to be a really good teacher as well. And so, even though you've got that certification, it takes years to kind of develop that and really dial in your coaching.
Yeah, and I would say that the certification levels are like it is harder to get through them the higher you go without a lot of experience. So, for instance, just the standard to pass the level 4 certification really requires a coach to have coached a lot. So to be able to have the proficiency to be able to do it. So that it does go hand in hand with that a little bit. The level 1 course is a little more attainable for kind of anyone that rides a bike. Like you could, if you have reasonable social skills and can ride a bike, then you could reasonably do the level 1 course. And you're going to get a lot out of it. You're going to get some teaching models and some risk management practices and understand the industry more. So that's great.
That's great. And are these certifications in person, or can this be done online?
Yeah, they're pretty much all in person. There are some additional, additional professional development modules that you could do online. So, for instance, if you want to learn more about adapting your coaching ability to e-bikes, then maybe there's like an online module that you can take for your certification level, do that, or or working with kids, you could maybe there's some of those kind of but they're pretty much all in person.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's reassuring that it is, because you're mentioning like social skills and things. And it's a lot more involved than just, kind of book work and knowing what to do. And it's much more hands-on. It sounds like. Skills
coaching and certification. I will say that like USA Cycling, kind of like fitness endurance coaching certifications, those are all pretty much online. So like the base level of that, you kind of study a book and take a test, and then you can get your USA Cycling coaching license. So depending on the program, what it is, but I would say all the skill-based coaching certifications aren't just like a quick online thing.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool. So, we've talked about a lot of stuff here today, skills and different tips. So I'm curious, what's one small thing that listeners could do today that would immediately make them better riders, or at least a habit that they could develop that's going to help them?
Yeah, I think maybe this is pertinent, I guess, for most people these days, that so the riding is evolving, right? It's always evolving. Trails are evolving, the equipment's evolving, the way that we ride the bike because of all that is evolving. And so, one of the kind of newer, well, I would say newer, but I guess maybe it is newer. But I would say one of the very most common things that I help people correct in their riding these days is just a movement pattern of vertical range of motion. So, and even like we're starting to move a little bit away from just get low all the time. Okay. We very long time ago, we used to say like, you'd hear the old myth of just get back, right? Get back, get your way, but lean back, and that came from the old bikes when you had to do that, like 26-inch wheel bikes, very short wheelbases, steep head angles. Like you had to ride them out the back, or else you're going over the handlebars.
And you didn't have a dropper post,
right. So you had to get back.
Yep.
I feel like that myth is pretty well dispelled at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kind of what we're working with now is really people do tend to be fairly more centered and more low. I will say that the current kind of like thinking is that we're actually trying to teach people how to be taller more often now.
Okay, interesting.
But being centered and all that sort of thing. So, for instance, like a real beginner rider, we often do kind of teach them the classic like ready position of, how to get lower. And for everyone's review, like, so you're not getting too far back. It's like you think about like if you're standing up tall like a giraffe on your pedals, chin over stem, and arms and knees just slightly bent. How do you move to get lower? Well, you think about 3 joints. Think about your elbows, your waist, and your knees. And as you move from being super tall giraffe, start bending your elbows and your waist first, and then bring in your knees later in that range of motion. And think about it like a dial from super tall all the way to touching the bike could be like 100%. So if you just bend your knees or start bending your knees first, then that's probably the most common mistake that I'd help people correct is that going from super tall giraffe down to get lower is to bend your elbows and your waist first, and then bring in the knees later.
Yeah.
And then this idea of kind of high hinge position where you've bent your elbows and your waist, but your knees are still like more straight. Using that position more often rather than a lot of knee bend. And the reason why is that you think about like efficiency, and strength. So, if you're standing in line at the bank, you'd stand with your knees like fairly straight. Your muscles are for balance. Your weight is like through your bones. If you tried to stand in line at the bank, like in chair pose, so like, or do a wall squat, you're not going to last real long.
Right.
And so back to our body battery kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, the more weight that I'm holding in my muscles in chair pose when I'm on the bike, like that's just sucking battery from me. And I can very quickly get lower with my knees when I need to. But if you look at the best riders in the world, most of them are riding with their knees like fairly straight, like a lot of the time, especially places where they need to be strong. So you also think about like how to strength, so if I put a barbell on your back and with, fairly straight legs, I could stack a lot of weight on that barbell. But if I put you in chair pose and then started stacking weight on that barbell, like you're not going to last real long, or you're not going to be able to hold as much weight. So places where we're like trying to stack forces through our legs into the bike, or the bike is stacking forces, up through us, from compression places on the trail, then like, maybe it makes sense to have like straighter knees so that we can translate those forces more efficiently and strongly, and not just like through my muscles.
Yeah, that's great. You just unlocked something for me, because that's, long descents. I'm like, why are my legs so tired? And it's probably because I'm bending my knees too much.
You're bending your knees too much. Yeah. And that means that you got to know when to bend your knees and how much to bend your knees.
Right.
But the default position should be like a taller position, especially with your knees. And then have an intentional approach of like when and how much to bend the knees. Because there's absolutely times when we need to bend the knees. Anytime that you want to, push through your pedals through the bike to like add pressure, to the, to pump something, all sort of thing. Like you gotta like bend your knees in order to wind up that motion, right? To be able to push your feet farther away, So that's and for beginner riders, like we tend to default more towards stability and confidence. And so we try to they mostly just get low, and that helps them feel, like more confident and then, and stable, and we're less worried about efficiency for them. But as riders move up through intermediate and advanced level riding, then I'm often actually just I'm teaching them to be taller more often, and how to use that straighter limbs, and then bend your knees when you need to. Only bend your knees if you need, please.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
All right. Yeah, that's a great one to think about and to practice a little bit. Well, Josh, what's the best way for riders to get in touch with you or to learn more about MTB Skills Factory?
Yeah, I mean, our website's pretty easy. It's just mtbskillsfactory.com. So we offer private lessons and group clinics. We also do just regular guided rides in this region and shuttle transports. We do youth camps, like day camps, summer camps for kids. And we operate in Western North Carolina. It's sort of like 8 different trail systems from Brevard all the way up to Boone, North Carolina. So,
wow.
Kind of the span of all of Western North Carolina, including, like national forests like Pisgah, but then also bike parks like Canoga and, like that kind of stuff, Beach Mountain, like different places like that. So the website's pretty good. We're pretty active on Instagram too. So we're just MTB Skills Factory on Instagram. But there's all the contact infos on there. We're pretty active with that. I'd love to come and see you. And then I also teach the certification courses for mountain bike coaches through what's called the GSMBC, which is the Global Syndicate of Mountain Bike Coaches, which is a newer organization that spun off of the PMBIA, if you follow that world. So through GSMBC, I'll teach those certification courses through levels 1 through 3. And I do that kind of all over the country. So chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you might see me on the trail somewhere.
Cool.
Come and see us.
Great. Got a lot going on. Well, Josh, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to share your insights and experience with us. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. I really enjoyed it.
And thanks to you for listening to the Single Tracks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate us wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with a friend who's looking to ride smoother and with more confidence. That's all we've got this week. We'll talk to you again next time. Peace.